Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hostplus Coaches Corner. The next hour to be spent with the current Bullets coach and former Australian national coach, Andrej Lemanis. A bit of housekeeping before we get into it. My name's Scott Rollinson. I'm the media manager from the Bullets. So I'll be moderating today, keeping across the questions that you've got coming in for Dre throughout. Through this session, it'll run about an hour. No need to take yourself off mute. We'll leave you on mute throughout. We had over 80 people register for this session. So as more join as well, as you can understand, there's going to be a lot of background noise if we're coming on and off mute. So we'll keep you muted and I'll take you off if need be. Also, with that level of participants, it's great that so many people are going to jump on. Hopefully you all get something out of it, but it will mean we won't be able to get through all 80 questions, obviously. So we've grouped the questions that have come into themes, because there was 4 pretty identifiable themes amongst all the questions that came through. So Dre will talk through those in a little bit and what we've done there. Couple of quick things around Zoom. Most of you over the last few months would have been living on this thing, but if you haven't used it before, just a couple of tips that are going to help over the next hour. If you hover your cursor, if you're using a PC, or just tap the screen on your phone, it'll bring up a little black taskbar down the bottom of your screen. On there, if you click on the chat function, that's going to be important throughout. So as we go along, as Andre's talking about a different question or topic, you might have something that you want to flag on the run as he's talking about it and want to raise. Best way to do that is just to type the message into the chat box. I'll see it and throw it Andre's way throughout. So you can join in the conversation as we're going along, and as he says something that resonates with you or something you want a little bit more detail on. The other one is your view. If you're seeing 20, 30, 40 people throughout in little boxes and you want to make Andre the feature, just hover your cursor up the top and you can change it from gallery view to speaker view, and that'll have whoever's speaking as the main feature. So obviously with Dre doing most of the speaking today, he'll be the main feature on screen throughout, so you can have him front and center right through. Dre will run through the topic areas that we've split up in just a tick, but Dre, first up, morning to you. Before we go into these topics, I want to throw a couple of nice easy ones at you. First question I'm going to throw your way comes from Harrison, who coaches the Renegades Club in Mackay. And Harrison wants to know what got you into coaching. But I'm going to add a second part to that from Andrew, who coaches the under 12 rep girls at Spartans and wants to know if you remember the first team that you coached.
Sure, Scott. Thanks for that, and welcome everybody. Appreciate everyone giving up their time to come in and listen to what I guess I have to say. It's always humbling that people would give up their time to come and listen to me talk. And I always open up any sort of clinic that I do by saying that one of the wonderful things about basketball is that it's a game of opinion and not fact. And so just because I'm saying something, it doesn't mean that it's true. It means that it's, I've found my way there over time, and it's something that I guess I have belief in. But everybody has their own journey and their own experiences, and is finding their own way to how they view the game and how they think it plays out best. And it's all dependent on the talent also that you're working with. So again, what I say isn't right. It's just my opinion on based on my experiences. I will cover off as well for my nose situation, the result of a surfboarding accident on Saturday. So a few stitches in there. So apologies for that. I have had to give up some of my modelling assignments for this week, but other than that, I'll be fine. All right, getting into it. In terms of your questions there, Scotty, yeah, I guess how I got into coaching, let me answer the second part first. So when I was playing with the Brisbane Boomers in the Siebel competition as a community club and domestic club, I thought they did a really nice job with their senior team of connecting the senior guys back to the grassroots kids that were coming through, and we were all assigned teams and certainly encouraged to coach teams within the club system if at all possible. Some guys just went and spent some time with some teams and were around them, but I actually chose to coach an under 14 balloon team, and that was my very first team coached, and my first, I guess, coaching experience. And I think one of the things that we've all probably found as coaches is once you get into coaching, you think you should have tried it earlier because it would have made you a better player. There are lots of things you discover as a coach that would certainly help you understand the environment perhaps a little bit better, and how you could have been a better player. In terms of senior coaching, came about, I was playing in the NBL with the South East Melbourne Magic at the time. Been with them for 2 years. I played with the South East Melbourne Saints the year prior to that. So I had a 3-year NBL career. Nothing great, nothing special, a lot of time on the bench. And it came to the end of the year, and Brian Goorjian was the coach, and at that time considered the best coach coaching in the NBL. And he came to me and said, "I don't have another playing contract for you, but I think you'd make a good coach, and I'd be happy to help you if that's the route that you want to go down." And at that time, it was still in basketball, was, I guess, it was still semi-professional. There were some people that were full-time basketball players getting paid enough, and then there were people like me who were getting paid a little bit of money and had to work full-time as well to exist. And I did get an offer from another NBL team. I think it was the Illawarra Hawks at the time. That was like for 10 grand. So to move cities and find another job, and because I had a pretty good job as an accountant, just that didn't make a lot of financial sense for me at the time. And I started to think about, if I'm going to stick in this game long term and eventually become able to, I guess, make some money out of it and have it as a career, that coaching was the way to go. I certainly wasn't going to make enough as a player. And so considered Brian's, I guess, option there, and went back to him a couple of weeks later and said, "Yep, I think I want to make the move." I was young at the time, maybe 24 or 25, so pretty early to give up on your playing career and head down a coaching path. And to his word, at that stage in the Victorian system, the NBL teams played on weekends in the national competition, and then on Wednesday nights in Victoria they had a local competition called the VBA, Victorian Basketball Association, and so all the teams played in that as well. So the 5 NBL teams or 4 NBL teams that were based in Melbourne at that time, some Seagull teams that were there, everyone played in winter at that time, with all field teams in that competition. And so the South East Melbourne Magic had a feeder team called the Sandringham Sabres that played in that competition, and ultimately Brian got me the head coaching job of that team and threw me in the deep end, and I went straight from player to coach, and was coaching guys that I'd been playing with the year prior, and that was a learning experience. And as we all do, I'm sure, as you grow through your journey, I look back at that now, and I feel sorry for those players that I was coaching, because I certainly wasn't helping them.
Thanks, Trey. So the 4 sort of categories that we've broken it into today, based on the questions that were submitted, are across general motivation. So how you motivate a team, how you motivate the other coaches you're working with, and how you get them all singing from the same sheet. So we'll touch on that a bit later. A lot of questions around defense. So Dre will go into that in a bit more depth and some theories around that a little later. Plenty of junior coaches registered. So Andre's going to touch a little on the junior side of things and progressing through the game from juniors to seniors. But Dre, probably the logical place to start, considering what you've just spoken about, is there was a number of questions around how to progress as a coach. So how to actually take this on as a full-time career. So questions like mentoring and what you look at in that sort of thing, ways to improve skills when you're a coach starting out, traits you're looking at when you're building a team, where your eyes are during a game, what end of the court you're watching. So there's a lot of questions that are, I guess, centered around how you progress as a coach and how you make that a full-time career. So we've bundled them together, and that's where we're going to start off. No
worries. Thanks, Scotty. And I guess just looking at this now too, like given there's still only 22 participants in this, like don't be scared to jump on that chat feature and type some questions in. And Scott, you can go ahead and interrupt me, because I think we can manage sort of 20 people reasonably well, a lot easier than we can manage 80 people. So feel free to direct this in a direction that you want it to go. When it was, you know, anticipated there could be 50, 60, 70 people on this call, it was, I think we felt that we really needed to just sort of be specific and try to get to the general points, but sorry, rather than be specific, hit the general points. But given there's only 20 of you guys on this thing, if you want to take it in a direction, have specific questions, go ahead, please, and hit the chat function, send something to Scotty, and we can take it down a path that's useful to you guys. Just in terms of the specifics of the question that Scott asked there, how you progress as a coach, and this is, I mean, this is one of those interesting ones, right? It's the first thing I think that it comes down to always is if you're doing it for yourself, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. To be a coach is a wonderful privilege in that you're in a position where you have the opportunity to impact positively or negatively the lives of those that you get to coach. And that is an amazing responsibility, and it is something that you need to take your joy from in order to be a good coach, in my opinion. For me, again, lots of people say, oh, what are your favorite moments of coaching? And they obviously talk about winning a championship or going to the Olympics, and they are they're wonderful, obviously, experiences, and sure they bring some joy, but my greatest moments of joy are, and so some of you on this call who I know would have heard this next little spiel a bunch of times, but when I got my first, my second NBL coaching job up in Townsville as an assistant for Ian Stacker. I'd coached for him as an assistant in Geelong for a year. We went up there, we didn't know much about the local landscape, and we decided to hold some open tryouts, and all the experts in the area came to us and gave us some of the best kids in the area, and we kind of had two courts running, and one court was the court where all the identified talent was, and the other court was, these kids are all right, but they're never going to make it, sort of thing. And we're holding these trials over a couple of days, and on this, they're not going to make it court, we sort of kept looking over there, and there's this one kid who's kind of athletic and had a good basketball body, certainly raw from a skill perspective, but it's like that kid's pretty good. Like, I think we got something to work with, and no, keep looking at the kids on this court. Like, he's never made a state team, he's never done anything. He's from Mount Isa, and just hasn't had the exposure to basketball. And so, yeah, but he's definitely got a basketball body. And it turns out, like, the player that I'm talking about is, Peter Crawford. And so we end up going, no, this guy's good enough. Like, we brought him in, started bringing him to some practice sessions. We ended up making him a development player my first year there. And Pete ended up being my guy in terms of a workout guy, allocated to me. And he certainly he participated in his own rescue. He drove a lot of the workouts himself. He was always on me, Dre, I need something else. I need some more ball handling drills. I need some more shooting drills. I played poorly on the weekend. I need something to help me with my defense. Like, he was just on me all the time. So worked with him for many years in Townsville. He went from development player to getting his first full-time basketball contract, and he was stoked with that. Then he became a starter, and I guess the story comes full circle when in 2012, as an assistant coach on the national team, I was in that room when Brett Brown tells him, "Congratulations, you're going to be an Olympian." And just to see the look on his face and how much it meant to him to be bestowed that honour and achieve that goal, and to think for me that I played a small part in it. Obviously, he takes the majority of the role in that. He's got lots of people supporting him, but to think I played a small part in that, that gives me tremendous pleasure. And I think as a coach, that's where you need to be, in that space. You're there to help others. You're there to help other people achieve the best they can be.
Dre, just before you leave that story, Arif's just put a question in around what you were talking about there about a basketball body. You identified that you had a basketball body. He's saying, how do you define what a basketball body is?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's, there's all different body types that end up being successful in the game. So it's, you know, it's a combination of the body and the mind ultimately, that turn, you know, that make the whole. But there's no doubt that someone with, you know, length, athleticism, ability to move sideways, that is going to, like, it lends itself to being more likely to be successful in the game. And sometimes there's a one unique skill set or athletic trait that you can identify in someone too. It's like, you know, so I think a classic player for us at the moment, or classic example in our team at the moment, is Will Magnay. You know, a young kid playing out of Queensland, and identified in the junior programs and came into the Centre of Excellence when I was there. And whilst was a raw talent for sure, like had lots to learn in terms of basketball skill, what he did show was an amazing ability to block shots. It was a world-class ability to block shots. And you could see that that could translate no matter what. That's a unique skill, can't be taught. Like you from an athleticism and body point of view, it's just something that you can't produce that. And so that was a unique skill that set him apart from others at that particular time. And it's like, well, he's worthwhile investing in, because I think we can bring some of these other things with him. But that's going to give him a chance to be special, like that one skill alone. And so, as in every situation, there's you know, a multitude of factors that need to be taken into consideration. But there's no doubt, you know, quick sprinter, good lateral movement, long athletic types certainly tend to have a chance to be successful in basketball. And you need the makeup and the mind and everything else that goes with it. And I guess maybe this will fit into one of the other things we talk about is, you know, how players progress and improve and all that sort of thing. I think to go with all that, you got like players who enjoy getting better, I think is an important attribute as well. Now, obviously that's now we're moving into the mind point side of it, but players who want to go experiment, they're happy to fail, they enjoy that process and enjoy building skill, and are prepared to get out of their comfort zones and not just stay in a little box and safe, and just try to be good at one, you know, specific skill that they found. So I think that's important, and as coaches, it's one of our jobs is to help put those players in an environment where they can develop those skills and are encouraged to develop those skills and not continue to sit in a safe environment.
So feel free, as Andre said, to drop any questions in as we go along. Dre, I might just tie off a couple of other ones that came through in this area before we move on to more of a focus around juniors. One was around a young female coach asking if you'd consider mentoring and the importance of mentoring as a young coach. So I'll leave with that one, and maybe also add a couple of others from young coaches or coaches just starting out, saying when you're watching the game, you're looking more at the offense or the defense being played. And another one is a new young coach. What should the goal be for a team when you're trying to define that and you're just starting out in coaching? So a couple to throw your way there.
No worries, thanks, Scott. And I'm not going to answer them just yet. And come back, make sure you bring me back on the point if I forget to come back to them. But I guess just continue to round out the coaching progression part of it as well. I think it's important as coaches that we continue to, you just got to seek knowledge, and being on things like this is important. Go to clinics, go to people's practices, go watch other coaches, and just learn. And it doesn't even have to be from basketball, like, you know, go to other sports, and continue just, it's a thirst for knowledge. And I'm always, you know, watching videos of other coaches, and on the internet these days you get access to everything. I'm reading all the time, just trying to find different things to help. And at the moment I'm really interested in the whole headspace situation and how people think and how you can help them with that. And so I think that's an important trait of a coach. And I think fitting a hand in glove, I guess, with the wanting to help other people. I think one of the best bits of advice that Brett Brown gave to me at one point there in our journey together was because I was asking him about NBA and how you progress and chances and all that. And he said, you know what, Andre? The best job is the one that you have. Stop looking anywhere else. Be damn good at the job that you have, and the rest of it will play out as it's supposed to play out. And that was fantastic advice at that particular time. And I've stuck to that. That's been a bit of a motto of mine ever since, is just be really good at the job that I have and don't worry about anything else. And fortunately for me, you know, things have turned out pretty well for me on my particular journey. So that's I think that's something that is good advice.
Trey, just on that, Mark's just dropped a question in about when you're talking about gathering knowledge and doing that as a coach in your own growth. He's saying, what other coaches, teams or books have you found inspiration in lately?
Yeah, one of the books I've really enjoyed it's called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's by Daniel, I think it's Kahneman, starts with a K. It's around cognitive thinking. And basically what he does is just pulls together a whole bunch of different experiments that have been done to prove some points, I guess, that he's trying to prove from a cognitive thinking point of view. So Thinking Fast and Slow, wonderful book. Some good stuff out of there. I've read a little bit around, and I'm not going to remember the name of the book, but it's I do. It's called Scorecasting. Basically, again, trying to use analytics to prove notions on like beliefs that are held within sport, like, you know, why do home teams win more than away teams, things like that, and it tries to break it down into provable things by numbers. And I thought that was a very interesting read. And I guess the one advantage of this COVID-19 situation for those of us that have been, you know, we don't have quite as much work to do and perhaps are looking for ways to fill in some time, is the availability of the webinar situation. And lots on the Canada coaching clinics. The European coaches have been doing their coaching clinics. There are a plethora of things online now of coaches giving talks, and it's been fun just to watch. And again, often I won't plug in for the whole hour. I'll plug in for 15 minutes here and there and pick up something and go, oh, that's a good idea. And I think one of the things as well as a coach is finding your way as to who you are, like understanding who you are as a coach. And we've all got to go through that journey, right? And like, you know, again, we've got to go through the journey. When I first got into the NBL, very unsuccessful team. We'd lose, you know, 10, 11 games in a row. Everybody was, you know, everyone's got their opinion, and you know, you get swayed by the white noise. And people at that, again, I've mentioned Brian Gorger before. He was the, you know, he was the guru or god of coaching in Australia at that particular time, and I played with Brian, and so I knew what he was like as a coach. And people say, "Oh, Brian would have handled it like this, and Brian would do it more like this, and you've got to be tougher, and you've got to do these things." And you know, and it's like I shifted from who I thought I was and tried to, you know, be somebody else. And as it turned out, that was just fake and hollow, and didn't have any impact because the players saw through it as fake and hollow. And so at the end of the day, you need to be really comfortable with who you are as a coach. If you're a screaming a yeller, you're a screaming a yeller. Identify that, but then identify how you're going to use that to the best impact of the team, and how you're going to supplement the negative parts of it. And same for me. I'm not a screamer and a yeller. I'm someone who works with a group and tries to engage with the team and sort of has a much more collaborative approach. I don't scream and yell, but I'm comfortable with that. And that's who I am. And I need to put, you know, if we get to those situations where, you know, there's someone needs a bit of a kick up the bum or gets motivated by that, then I've got some people around me who can help me with that. So I think that's important, is understanding who you are, understanding what you believe in terms of a philosophy, you know, basketball philosophy, and that continues to evolve all the time. But again, be comfortable with that, and and believe in it. Don't get distracted by the white noise of those around you. And then just another thing I'll say again, this is an interesting one, I think, for those junior coaches, is I think when people first get into coaching, they always want drills. Drills. Give me drills. We want to keep the players occupied, basically. And then after a while, you start to grow and you learn, and you go, oh, actually, let me learn a little bit more about the X's and O's. Give me some tactics here about offense and defense and how we handle certain situations. And, and people start going down that path. And if they continue to progress, then ending up in a situation in terms of, oh, actually, I need to find out about player management. How do you deal with players? How do you deal with the egos? How do you deal with the emotions and the ups and downs and someone not playing and someone playing and someone getting shots and not getting shots? How do you deal with all that? And so I think if I can give you one message, you need to flip that the other way around. The most important thing is the player relationships. Get on that part first. Understand that. I think if you can do a good job of that, the rest of it's pretty easy. The offensive and defensive tactics and techniques, the drills will come from once you understand who you are as a coach and what you think offensively, the path you're going to take the team down, and defensively the path you're going to take the team down. Then the drills will flow from that, because obviously you're trying to get, if you're going to drill something, you're going to drill something that's relevant for the game, which is what you're trying to achieve through your offensive and defensive philosophies. So that will come from that. But figure out how you're going to manage the players, which is one of the themes that I think came through here as well pretty strongly. In terms of mentoring, I guess there's a couple of things. Is absolutely find yourself mentors. I still have mentors that I speak to regularly. I've got one guy who watches every single Bullets game, watched every single Booms game for me. Again, just close, committed friend who can tell me how it is. He watches every game. We just chat about it. He's like, I thought this was good. I'm not sure why you had that group on. I thought that was a mistake at that time. This timeout, good timeout, bad timeout. Subbing patterns, good, bad. Maybe you could have tried changing your defense when they went on that 6-0 run, whatever. Like he's always given me his just vision of the game and thoughts, and because I know he's coming from a place of care. Obviously, that's a critical relationship. And I mean, when I was coming through, I was really fortunate, young. I talk about that Sandringham Sabres situation, my first coaching job with the in the senior environment. And there was a Slovenian coach who was an assistant coach with the Magic at the time, who I knew, and I'm not sure why, but he took an interest in me, and he ended up at that stage winning the Victorian League on Wednesday nights. We played all across wider Melbourne. So for those of you that know Melbourne, we've been Frankston, we've been Dandenong, we've been Werribee, we've been Sunbury, like we're all over the joint. Sometimes tipping off at 8 o'clock at night. And for some reason, he chose to drive to every game, watch me coach. And then afterwards we'd go for something to eat and a coffee, and he'd talk to me about what I saw. I'm forever grateful that he invested that time in me. And again, I'm not sure what he got out of it other than seeing me grow. And I know over time, as I started to get a little bit of so-called success in coaching, he would reach out from time to time and talk about how much he's enjoying watching my growth and development. So that was pretty cool. I'm always indebted to him for that. And I think that's the other thing, is just understand, I say so-called success because I think one of the mistakes and visions that we have is that success is, you go and you get to coach a national team or you get to coach in the NBL, and that's not what. I don't think that's what it's about. Unfortunately, our system is set up because that's what it rewards. If you want to be a full-time coach, really, that's one of the few coaching jobs that we have that pay enough money to be full-time within this country. And so that's kind of where everybody aspires to. But from my perspective, it's about figuring out who you are and how you contribute best. And if you are the best under-14s coach in the country, you are extremely valuable to the system. And the job you are doing for the country and for the players is as important as any other job that we have, perhaps more important. Unfortunately, the system doesn't reward that. The Basketball Australia system doesn't reward that. But again, if you're taking your joy and your pleasure out of helping others and seeing those under 14 kids grow and develop and move on and eventually one day play for their country or the NBL or the NBA or whatever, and you can get your joy and your part of that journey, then that's something that's pretty special as well. I see, I know Mark Radford's on this call, but he's down in Tasmania as the high performance coach down there, doing an amazing job for that system and those kids. And it's something that the kids in Tasmania haven't been fortunate to have, that leadership and guidance for a number of years. And since he's gone down there, he's turned that thing around, and they're producing basketball products. And I know Mark has coached in the NBL and could be an NBL coach, but he's doing an amazing job down there, and that's important to the system. And so it's where, find your joy out of where you're making a difference and where you're contributing. And that's a little bit, Brett's advice in terms of, don't always look for the next job. Just be really good at the one that you have. And it's amazing how, if you're really good at that, kind of things play out. And it doesn't always mean getting another job and, whatever, moving up the ladder. It can be through the joy and contentment of seeing kids do well and then coming back and thanking you and those sorts of things. Like, there's a lot, I think, there's a lot of reward to be had in that, and it's not all monetary. Certainly, I don't think that's where you need to get your joys out of coaching.
Dre, just a couple of quick ones that have come through on chat. You may have tied off on this from Adrian. He's saying, before, when you were talking around gathering knowledge, he says there's probably been around 200 virtual clinics over the past few weeks. How do you filter what comes through and work out what you want to apply? And then I'll throw another one to you as well from Nick, who said you were talking about having a staff that balances you. What are some of the things you're looking for in your staff makeup?
Yeah. So in terms of how you filter through it, that's the $1 million question. And again, just I guess an example, when I was still developing, I used to go across the NCAA's Final Four weekends, and they were not because of that event, because they had a coaching clinic around it. And when I first used to go, I'd go to every clinic and I'd write down a plethora. It was basically, what we've been having through COVID shoved into 3 days there, in terms of there was just clinics from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and just go down there and write notes and notes and notes and notes and notes and notes. And I was at that stage still searching for who I was. So having this information was kind of handy, but it was also confusing in terms of, because there was just lots of information and some of it conflicting. But that's where then you start to go back into your team environment, and I will encourage you to try things, is what you want to do. You want to try, you want to experiment and find out for yourself what you like, what you don't like, and what I guess works best for your athletes. And then you sort of, what you have then is these reference notes that you can go back to every so often and flick through and go, actually, yeah, I've been thinking, yeah, that might actually suit me now. That kind of fits with whatever it is that I'm grappling with at the moment, or a defensive transition drill that I've been looking for. That one actually makes sense, or a concept, or pick and roll. That's right. That's how they spoke about that at that particular clinic, and that bit makes sense for me now. And then I think as you continue to grow, and this is kind of where I'm at with those clinics at the moment, and what happened to me with those Final Four clinics is I got to a point where, again, I was reasonably comfortable with where I had landed in terms of philosophy. And so then I went specifically in mind to how do I take things now that are going to make my fundamental philosophy, or add to my fundamental philosophy and make it better. So I was just looking to pick a little bit. So it depends on your coaching journey, I think, with the webinars, as to the little bit. Are you looking for little bits just to pick and add to your overall whole, or are you in the brand new stage where you're just collating information? And collating information, as we all know, whenever we start anything, there's just a lot. And then you got to start going out, and it's like, when you sit down, and I'm sure the first time you try to use Excel and someone's telling you how to use it, you got no idea. There's just a heap of information that's overwhelming. You got no idea. Then eventually you start trying to make a spreadsheet yourself, and it's like, all right, so how do I add those two numbers together again? All right, somebody told me about that. And you go through and you find that, and it's like, that's right, that's how I do it. And now you move on a little bit. And now that's ingrained. And I think that's sort of that situation. And before I forget to address it again, Scott, in terms of mentoring, a couple of things with us at the Bullets. My practice session is always open. So if you happen to be in Brisbane, you're more than welcome to come along and have a look. And we certainly have, internships available all the time. So there's the two bits. If you come along and you come to practice session, like we've got open coaching staff, we'll share, we'll chat. We'll hang around after practice, have a discussion. If you've got some questions on something, no problems. We're always happy to share and help as best we can. And one of the things that, again, through my journey, was fortunate, obviously, relationship with Brett, got the opportunity to go and spend a lot of time with the San Antonio Spurs. And here I was sitting in, you know, for me at that time, it was like I was in awe of these NBA players and, you know, little kid in the candy store type situation, just wide-eyed. And at the time that Greg Popovich gave me and the other coaching, so the other members of the coaching staff for San Antonio was overwhelming. And the information they shared with me, and from that moment on, I was like, I have a responsibility to give back here. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. And so anytime you come into a Bullets session, no problems, we'll share. You can come back, you can come in the coaches' meetings, you can come back after we talk about, after practice session, we have a debrief, you're more than welcome to come into those. So that's just a sort of an informal way that you can go about it. But there's also, like, we do have internships with coaches. We need things that, you know, where a certain task that needs to be performed, obviously on a daily basis, and stuff that you can help with. This last season, I think we had 3 interns. One of them was from Spain. Steve Catlin is your guy for that. With us, it's Steve. I think Steve's on the call. Well, we said he was going to be on this webinar, but it's Steve, STEVE. Catlin is CATLIN at brisbanebullets.com.au. And he's the guy who manages our interns and is a coach with us. And so if that's something you're interested in, reach out to Steve, and yeah, you can journey down that path.
Maybe just really quickly, we might just tie off on the last one in this, and then I'm just conscious of time. We might move it into the junior section for a bit, and then I know you've got your whiteboard there as you get into the defense part you're keen to get into. But just a quick one for Nick that was saying about a balanced staff and how you go about what things you're looking for there. We might just tie off on that one and then move it into the juniors part.
Yeah. So I think a couple of things is, firstly, it's interesting because you need people, I think, with a similar value set and who identify with teams in a similar way that you identify with teams. Like, if you're too conflicting in how you know, if as a staff, one of your things that you should be in full court man-to-man, run and jump defense the entire game, and the other one thinks you should sit in zone the entire game, like, how you think the game is played might be too different to be useful at the end of the day. But for me, even more importantly, is the value set on how you live your life. Why are you there? You know, are you there to help the players? Are you there? Are you in it for yourself? Are you there to give to the, you know, in our situation, are you there for the good of the club? Are you there for yourself? Like, the value set is important. That matches, and I'm certainly someone who's all about team and all about the club, and so I need people who are prepared to give of themselves to others. I think that's important. So that bit needs to be similar. But then you also need to support yourself with, so good people. That's what it comes down to. You need great people around you, not only as a staff, but also in the team and in our situation in the office. You need good people. And then as you grow over time, I think understanding and being comfortable with who you are and not trying to hide any of that is going, all right, I'm somebody who likes to, again, I'm somebody who likes to put my arm around people and get to them and speak to them and have them included. And so I need someone who's been prepared to be a bit sterner at times and take on those responsibilities, and even sometimes have a hard conversation. I mean, obviously I have some hard conversations, but just identifying that that's an area where I like support, and someone can go ahead and take that for me and do some of that job for me. That's an important role to be filled. I think, yeah, just supplementing where you potentially might find some weaknesses and understanding that. And I mean, for for me, CJ's, just CJ Bruton's offensive nous is as good as anybody I've ever been around. Like, it's absolutely superb, and his creativity and his ability to see the game, but then relay that to players as well. His ability to express that to the individuals that are coming through. And one of the reasons we're able to recruit Nathan Sobey is because of CJ Bruton. It's like, I want to learn from CJ, the way he plays, and he's, he had a touch point with him on the national team at the Commonwealth Games, and wow, I feel like I have a lot to learn from CJ. And so surrounding yourself with people who are going to able to add to the overall whole of the package that you have to offer as a coach.
Thanks, Trey. Let's spend 5 minutes maybe on juniors, because there was quite a few questions that came through that we've grouped together in that category that I know you're keen to touch on. And this was things, Dre, around when you should start coaching for positions with kids, how much time you should spend on skills compared to game sense, keeping kids motivated, a lot in that sort of space. And I know you're keen to have a chat about that for a few minutes before we move into the defensive side of things.
Sure, mate. Sorry, I'm just pulling up a slide here that I used in another presentation a while ago. So let me take you down a path, and there's no way this is going to be 5 minutes, Scott. This is, goodness me, I've just seen the time. So again, I'm happy to be here for a while. If people need to jump off, I get it. Anyone who's perhaps heard me present in the last 4 years, 5 years, will have heard me go down this path. When I got to the AIS, I had as the full-time national coach, one of the things I was blessed with was time. I was very fortunate to have time, but also access to people around me who had skills that I didn't have and knowledge that I didn't have. And there's a department there around skill acquisition, which is something that I'd never, it's an area that I'd never heard of before. And it's taken me down, I guess, a journey and a pathway that I'm a true believer in now. And I guess it's relevant, particularly in this space, in terms of for any coach to be successful and the level that you are coaching at. It's about designing your practice sessions in a manner that's intelligent and enables you to get the outcome that you're looking for, the skill development that you're looking for, and allowing the players to figure a way through that. And that's a bit of a long-winded way of trying to explain what I'm trying to explain. So I think one great example from that the skill development expert gave me right was he was working with an Olympic swimmer, or he wasn't. There was an Olympic swimming coach working with an Olympic swimmer who'd already medaled, and her dive had become too shallow into the pool, and so they were trying to get her to, up the angle of a dive. And coaches, had been through their thing, and then they got in the strength and conditioning coach and all the body movement experts about, oh, you got to engage your core and then lift through your hips and through your buttocks and then extend out and all these sorts of things. And they were trying, again, giving her lots of messages, and she still wasn't getting it. And then eventually they came and saw Adam Gorman's the guy's name, about skill acquisition, and said, Adam, we've got this. Have you got any thoughts on this? And he went down, he gave some thoughts, said, yeah, I think I can help. And he went down to the pool, he took a pool noodle with him, went down the pool, put her on the diving block, or starter's block, put the pool noodle out and told her to dive over the pool noodle. And she dove over the pool noodle, and he looked at the coach and said, how about that angle? And he's like, goodness me, yeah, that's close. And, just raise it a little bit. Next one, yep, that's perfect. And so the message of that is, as the coach, you need to find the stimulus to get the learning outcomes that you are after. And it's much more powerful if the players are able to discover it themselves than if you are there telling them. And I think that's, you know, something as coaches that we're fearful of, we're terrified of, is that so learning is inherently messy. And if you're going to go down this path of letting the activity or the game be the teacher, then when you first introduce stuff, it's going to look horrendous. It's going to look messy and cloudy. And if someone else walks in, they're going to look at it and go, that coach doesn't know what they're doing, or they're disorganized. Or, you know, it looks much neater if you walk in and people are doing 1-on-0 layups, right? And then they get it and they pass it back here, or they're doing 5-on-0 offense. That looks much neater, but it's not transferable to the game. It has no resemblance of what the game looks like. You never run offense 5-0 in the game. You rarely, I don't know how many times you get to do a 1-on-0 layup in the game. And so adding elements of the game that are realistic and constraints in the drills that make the drill realistic in terms of transferability to the game sense, for me, is where it's at. And, you know, talking about the different positions, I think, like, you don't need to worry about any of that stuff. At an early age, players will naturally gravitate to where they naturally gravitate to. Worry about developing their skills and skills that are transferable into the games. It's like the whole, when we go and practice shooting, right? The idea of practice shooting is going and throwing it to somebody in the corner and they shoot 10 uncontested shots. In the game, that doesn't happen very often. And again, Gormo took me down a path with that. You know, after the 2012 Olympics, he went through and, you know, we were having lots of discussions and we're talking about shooting and why we don't shoot as well as the other nations, even though we got good shooters. And one of the things that he had his team do was go through and chart every shot taken in the Olympics, and it was about, you know, it was in 4 categories: uncontested, slightly contested, moderately contested, and heavily contested. And it turned out that 85% of shots had some sort of contest on it. So the thing, the bit that caught my attention was when he asked me, so how often do you practice that? How often do you practice contested shooting? It's like, well, no, when we practice shooting, we sort of just go on 0, and, you know, and it happens a little bit in practice. But again, through my Bullets experience, I had one of the interns one day just count, and was coming good, and like how many shots he took, including pre-practice and after practice and all that. And it was something like, you know, he went through a routine and ended up taking like 350 shots, but only how many did he take in practice? He took like 8 shots in practice that were contested, and that was it. So only 8 shots that he had out of his 350 were actually shots that he was likely to get in the game. And then going back to the Olympic model in terms of the contest, it was how adapt, like what notice of, could you noticeably see an adaptation on the shot? So I couldn't notice any adaptation. There's a slight adaptation, moderate adaptation, or heavy adaptation. Went up right-handed, had to change hands and finish with his left because of the contest, that sort of thing. And again, Gormo's challenge to me was, again, when do you practice these things and when do the players get to do it? And let me just share a screen with you here. Scotty, you got to let me share. It's got host as disabled attendee screen sharing. Can you fix that? Do you know how to fix that?
I'll have a look. Yeah, I'll try and fix.
So just, yeah, around the adaptation. And that's where Gormo took me down this path around. To be truly skillful is to be truly adaptable. And I mean, all the best players in the world, like, so Roger Federer can win on hard court, can win on clay, can win on grass, can win against left-handers, right-handers, heavy servers, spin servers, doesn't matter. He can adapt his game and is able to take in the information that is coming at, all the different information that's coming at him, and still be able to be effective against it.
Just give that a try again now, Dre. You should be right.
Yep. Beautiful. Thanks, mate. So I can share this screen, and then I'll pull this up. And what was I going first? So again, this is a presentation that I did a while ago, and it's just interesting. So this is somebody was in a LA Lakers locker room once. At this time, obviously, when these guys were playing, and they were, you know, free throws at that time, how many free throws did you take before or after practice? Let's keep a record. And this was a photo that was taken at this particular stage in the season. And so at practice, you know, people were shooting 93, 91, 90%, 89%. In games, that slipped to 55, 86, you know, even Kobe, 86, 68, you know, admittedly on low attempts down, you know, for Chris Dillon down to 46%. So everybody was shooting a lower percentage in games than they did at practice. And it's like, well, this doesn't help, right? In terms of we need to find another way to make practice more representative of what's going to happen in the game so we can actually practice the skills that we're going to have in the games. And this, you know, again, took us down this whole open shots versus contested shots situation in elite games. One of the other things, a study around Taekwondo training. So athletes were asked about, you know, these different categories and to rate certain things. And so anxiety going into practice versus going into competition, confidence, the mental effort required for training versus mental effort required for competition, your heart rate pre-competition and pre-practice, and predictability of opponent at training and at practice. And again, the stuff that comes out is what is happening in practice is not reflective, and particularly this was a big one, right, for them, is like the mental effort that you've got to give at practice isn't reflective of the mental effort that you're going to face in the competition. So how is this helping prepare us for, you know, the ultimate situation, which is the competition and the outcome that we're looking for? And there's a whole bunch of other things here, but I'll go to this slide. This is one of my favorite slides. I think that always focuses me now on when I'm preparing drills for practice and preparing practices, I always end up coming back to this framework here. Is, you know, this is the difficulty of the task and this is the learning benefit that we get from it. And so if we have a task here where the difficulty is too low, and you can often see that the challenge point is too low if there's not enough, like no one's making any mistakes at all. And that's why I said learning is inherently messy and you're going to see some mistakes. If the players look bored, and that's, you know, one of the things about how you keep players motivated is you keep them engaged and keep them enjoying what they're doing, and that there's just not much emotion going on with what's going on. You know, people aren't sort of, you know, emotion can be frustration, not being able to, you know, find their way through something, or elation at being able to actually now learn a new skill and grow and adapt. And so, you know, something for us is, for, you know, at our level in particular is, so here you go, Will Magnay, go and make a right-handed layup. Like, he's going to be able to make a right-handed layup. There's no more learning in that for him. It's too low a difficulty. You're going to get this sort of stuff from him. Similarly, if I give Will the ball and tell him, you know, we've got 5 defenders on the floor here, Will, you need to dribble the length of the floor and find a way to shoot a 3 at the other end of the floor that goes in. Like, that is unrealistic and too difficult a task, in that he can never find his way to that particular successful outcome. And so the challenge as a coach always is to try to put your drills and whatever you're doing into this mid-range here, where there's the optimal learning in terms of a task that is going to challenge. People have to grow and find their way through it, yet they can find their way through. And that's, again, I think one of the skills of a coach is understanding when to shut up and say nothing and let the players figure their way to an outcome, and when to like step in and go, well, all right, you're not quite finding your way through this. Can I offer you one suggestion? Or give them one point that they might want to work on, or now alter the drill again to make it slightly easier so they can get to a particular outcome. And, you know, for juniors, some of that might be just in this particular game, we're only allowed to dribble with our left hand. If you're working on left-handed dribbling, that might be something that you break it down to. I know spacing is often big with juniors, and so you just might have areas marked out on the court and say we're only allowed 1 player per area. So if someone dribbles into your area, you have to go somewhere else. If someone cuts into your area, you have to go into one of these other squares. We can't have 2 people in the same square. Things like that. I mean, this translates for us into practice scenarios in terms of, so if we're after, we're trying to get more pace in the game, kick ahead passes. In a practice drill, we will add +1 for kick ahead passes that go over the center line. and invariably, you know, players want to win, and so boom, they start trying to find ways, and you hear the players talking about it in breaks. Hey, let's get more kick ahead passes, and defensively, they talk about defensive transition. Let's take away the kick ahead passes, as those sorts of things. We might have things if you throw it in the post when we're trying to play off more post feeds. If you get a score that results out of an action off a post feed, we're going to give you the score +2. Things like that. Like, you can keep manipulating the environment to get to the outcomes and the learnings that you're after without coming down and being like specific about it from a coaching point of view and having to tell them everything. It's, you know, as simple as, again, with kids trying to teach different passes, so you can have them stand there and throw chest passes to each other. That's fine. And now maybe again with a pool noodle, you go, all right, that's fine. Now you put the pool noodle in the way of the chest pass and go, all right, find another way to pass it there. Rather than telling them overhead pass or bounce pass, kids will figure a way, and oh yeah, there you go, we call that a bounce pass. And just different ways to create the stimulus that gets to the ultimate learning that you're after. And that for me is the challenge of the coach. One, that takes time and effort to do this. It takes courage to let it be messy and have others around you see it be messy, and the confidence in yourself that no, this is the right thing to be doing. This is ultimately the best way for it to get the learnings that we're after. And intelligence as to when to say nothing, when to step in, and when to change what you're doing if it's not quite where you think it's going to be. And at the end of sessions, I think it's worthwhile just sort of reviewing some of that. And even at the end of a drill, sometimes just ask the players, what did you get out of that? What did you learn? What did you think? Maybe why do you think we did it that way? What were some of your learnings out of that? So this for me is a key slide in terms of player development.
Dre,
this one's
had a question asking if you can, if some of these are able to be shared after. Are you able to share some of those key points with us? And we
yeah,
can
I
send that out on email?
Yes is the answer. I'll just have to check because some of these slides aren't mine. And so I'll have to check with the original creator. He was happy for me to obviously present on them, but I'll just have to check that he's happy for me to share them. But yeah, should be fine. This is, let me put this in presentation mode because he's done a nice job of this. Slideshow. Play from current slide. So again, in terms of one of the stuff, again, this is Gormo's slide. In terms of, his challenge to me is why aren't we practicing things that happen in the game? And like whenever I've done this, people say, oh, but there's something going, players feeling rhythm and seeing the ball go through the net. And I'm not arguing that. Absolutely. There's still a segment of players going and shooting on zero and feeling good about it and getting a technique and all those sorts of things that I think will continue to exist for sure. But for me, it's like rather than that being 95% of shooting practice and then we go and have 5% that happens in a realistic environment, let's try to skew that more to 30% is unrealistic and 70% is more realistic. And there's different ways and means of doing that. I mean, playing one-on-one, we need to recognize that one-on-one is shooting practice. It's awesome, trying to find a way, and you've got to be adaptable and read your defense, and it's all stuff that happens in the game. 2-on-2 is shooting practice, because now I'm a receiver as well. I'm catching and making an assessment. Am I open? Is the defender too close? Do I need to make a drop? Like, that's shooting practice. Let's get away from making 10 in the corner as just seeing that as shooting practice. Yes, it has a role, but a much smaller role for me than it currently is playing. But so we went through and did. We went through. Gormo and his team went through just different types of shots: 3-point shots, post moves, pull-up jumpers, coming off the screen, and this was with boomer athletes, right? So we gave them boomer level athletes to be able to do this. And we did on zero, and then we had it contested. We put in a defender, sometimes put the defender behind, obviously made them late and all those sorts of things. And this is some of the results that came from it. So when there was a presence of a defender, players jumped higher. Like, this was all video and they got all their tools and they can measure how high you jump. So players jumped higher when there was the defender present. The release time was faster when a defender was present. They shot the ball with higher arc when a defender was present. And there was much more variability in terms of where the shot came from. I mean, this in itself, faster release, higher arc, higher jump is variability. And then around just, again, sort of half pump fake in, holding, shooting a bit later, shooting a bit earlier, all that sort of stuff happened when there was a defender present. And so, again, unless we're creating an environment where we practice these things, I'm not sure how we expect our players to be good at them. And so, for me, that is, that's driven a lot for me these days. And we'll do a lot of, we do a lot of it. We're doing workouts at the moment with our players because we're allowed 1-on-0s. Actually, we're not allowed physical contact at the moment. You can have two people working out together. We'll still have a coach with, one of those hand things going and reaching and trying to contest shots. And even, again, people have seen me do different scenarios when you got just one player working out 1-on-0. Things like they drive to the basket, and just before they shoot it, you call out which hand they have to shoot with. So it's they haven't predetermined it. You call out, they drive and you call out right, and now they have to finish with their right hand. Sometimes you add, again, depending on the skill level of the player, where they're at. Now I'm going to call out which foot you have to jump off, and now I'm going to call out which foot and which hand which foot you have to jump off, which hand you have to shoot with. So come in left, right, and so again, there's different stimulus, and it's just they start with their back to you and you tell them to turn, and then they're catching it, and then you're throwing the ball in different spots. You throw it to them, tell them to shoot early, shoot late. Like there are different things that you can add, which adds different stimulus. I mean, we did a drill this morning with Nathan Sobey. Again, just he was ball handling and it was about, just passing and cognitive stuff. And it was if I said an even number, he had to throw it to the guy on his right. If I said an odd number, he had to throw it to the guy on his left. And if I said a number that was divisible by 7, regardless if it was odd or even, there was a target in front of him, he had to go hit the target. So there are different stimuli that you can add, and it's fun. I think for me, that makes coaching fun, and you be creative. And another bit of advice I'd say is, again, like I said here at the start, there's no right and wrong, right? There's just opinion, and have some damn fun with it. It's don't be stuck in other coaches run it this way, and if you're thinking about something you want to try or something that you think is going to work for your group, and you haven't seen a drill on it before that you think, just make it up. What's the skill you're trying to get to? No worries. Come up with something that will, put us in that situation. And again, this is where you need the confidence. And this is why I like to be a coach who's engaging with the group and work with the collective, because they start to trust you. And that, again, let me get down to be a great coach, what you need to do is develop trust with your players. If the players trust that you have their best interests at heart, then you have a chance to make a difference and to influence. Ultimately, that's all you can do in coaching, right? That's all you're there for, is to influence. You can't do it. You can't act the skill for them. You can only influence them in a direction. And so in order to do that, you need to build trust. And that's one of the reasons I like to, build a team chemistry. And where that's applicable here is, like, again, you build trust over time. You can come in and say, look, fellas or girls, I'm not quite sure if this is going to work, this drill, but I'm trying to get us somewhere. So give me some leeway with this one and tell me what you think. Help me out. Make it better. If you guys think it stinks, help me make it better. And work with them on that. Like, they'll trust you, and if it's a pile of rubbish, you get to the end of it and go, actually, I need to put some more work into that, or trust me, you'll never see that drill again. No worries. And the players will laugh and it'll all be good and everyone moves on. But have some fun with it, enjoy it, and keep evolving.
Jay, I'm conscious of the time. Some people might need to drop off here. And if you do, that's fine. We'll have recordings of this session that we'll share around afterwards as well. Dre, we've got the Zoom for a little bit longer, and I know you were keen to touch on the defensive side of things, because there was a lot of questions that have come through in that space. So for those that are happy to hang on and want to watch this part as Andre talks through some of his theories around defense, obviously feel free to do so. And any questions you have, feel free to flick them through. If you can't hang around, completely understand, and we'll post this up a little bit later. But Dre, we do have the Zoom for about another 20 minutes or so. So if you want to go through this, I know you're keen to get your whiteboard out. We might try to this part and you can get into the defensive side of things.
So, I mean, the questions that came through were actually more about defensive transition. Because, I mean, defense is a very wide area, and I don't have any clips prepared, which if if I was being good at this, I would have. But the questions that came through that I saw late last night was mostly around defensive transition, and I think talking to a couple of different philosophies. So in my journey, I've gone down a few different paths, and again, it's about finding what's right for you and your team, and there is no right and wrong. And some of it is certainly player dependent. So, I mean, there are some college teams that send all 5 guys to glass because they believe they're fast enough to go ahead and get back. A lot of NBA teams are buy into the analytics of it, of the whole thing that says there's some analytics around, from a defensive point of view, the best thing that you can do is have a 5-on-5 matched up scenario. So our 5-man's on their 5-man, our 4-man's on their 4-man. The next best thing is to have 5-on-5 with cross matches. So our 3-man's guarding their 5-man scenario. And then it gets progressively worse, obviously, for numbers advantages. So if there's 5 offensive players and 4 defensive players, that's next worst. If it's 5 offensive players and 3 defensive players, that's again, worse again. And sort of walking that all the way down. And so some NBA teams play those numbers and say, when we shoot it, we're just going to get 5 guys go back. We don't care if we don't ever get one single offensive rebound. We're just going to send 5 guys back. So, there's the 2 extremes just within the American system of the college and of the NBA. So, again, it's what's right for you. The system that we use is for us 1, 2, and 3. So basically our guards always get back. 4 and 5 go to the boards. Now some variants of that are, if you are 1, 2, or 3, and you think you can go get it, license to go get it. No worries. If that's who you are as a player, who you are as an athlete, and you see the opportunity, no worries, go get it. If you don't get it, you better make sure that we don't give up a layup going the other way. So, you need to sprint back and participate in our defensive transition rules from there. If you're 4 on 5 and you're above the foul line, and again, this is player dependent. Some guys, Mika Bacona is just going to crash regardless. If you're more like Tony Ronaldson, you're just going to get back. That's the way that it is. You're not going to ask Tony Ronaldson to come flying in from the 3-point line. And those of you who are on this who are too young to know who Tony Ronaldson is, go ahead and do some research. Has played the most ever games of anybody in the NBL. So that's our rules in terms of when it's shot, what happens. And then we have the closest player to the ball. If we don't get the offensive rebound, obviously, the closest player to the ball is going to stick the ball. That's the number 1 thing. The most important thing is the ball. Second most important thing is the basket. So closest guy to the ball stops the ball and tries to start to corral it to a sideline. We try to keep it out of the center circle. So again, if we're working on defensive transition at practice, or in a 5-on-5 scenario, we might give +1 for the defensive team if you can get the ball to come through the outside alleys. We protect the basket is a number 2 thing. So the deepest player back, the first player back has the basket, and they don't leave the basket for anything. And ultimately, we don't bump them out unless it's safe to do so. So if Jason Kadee is on Andrew Bogut, who's running at the rim, and Jason Kadee's down there as the first man back, he's got the basket and he's dealing with Bogues. You can front, you can do whatever, get around, and we can help him on the back end of that. But Hodgie's not running trying to bump Jace out of there to get the Bogues. We now sprint back to boxes and elbows and match up from there. And I'm not sure how much you guys can see this. Tell me if you can see it, can't see it. So again, closest man here has the ball, if that's where it is. Furthest man back runs back, and they've now got the basket. If one of the things I haven't mentioned, if you're in the corner as a 3-man and you're choosing to run back rather than go to the glass, we run you back through the elbows, all right, and then you become a defender. And so the other 3 defenders have a responsibility to sprint back and plug the floor. We're not taking away kick ahead passes. We're sprinting back down the, basically again, boxes and elbows, sprinting down, trying to narrow the floor so the amount of space that the offensive player now sees as he's driving down the floor is limited, and he doesn't see space to come through here. Again, we're trying to staple it to the sideline as best we can. Now, obviously, if this is Matthew Hutchin on Jerome Randall, he's going to have trouble doing that. So he needs to just back up, give himself enough, and just start to try to corral him to a sideline as best he can, and rely on these people behind him that they're going to narrow the floor and be able to slow him down for him. If you are behind the ball, like you've shot it, and you end up falling out of bounds, and now, you know, here comes the ball. We're down here, we've got the basket covered, we've got boxes and elbows. 99 times out of 100, as you sprint back to the weak side high quadrant, because if we're any good at the rest of this, this is the matchup that you're going to have. And in defensive transition, we say anybody guards anybody, you don't have your man. You have the player that's in your area based on what the defensive transition scenario has put you in. So anybody guards anybody. Once it's slow and we've got it under control, if we have mismatches on this side that we can switch back afterwards, no worries, we'll switch that back. But if that's Hodgie falling out of bounds, and this is Bogues running here, Hodgie's not sprinting back, like I said before, trying to bump Jace out. He'll sprint back, and if he's the last man back, weak side high quadrant guy is Casper Ware standing there, he's got Casper Ware. That's the way that it is. So that's the, you know, I guess in a nutshell, our defensive transition scenarios at the moment. One of the things that has become big in Australian basketball in recent times is the tag-up situation. I went down that path for a couple of years myself with the Bullets. I tried it. And that came, I was coaching the World University Games team, and like every team, you're trying to generate pace, and it's an area that we've been pretty good at. And came away from one tournament where we were playing European teams and couldn't get any pace in the game at all. And I was really frustrated by it and was wondering what was going on, and started to explore it and, you know, watch the games more intently. And it felt like every time we got a defensive rebound, that player was contested, and any outlet, that player caught it and they couldn't catch it and go. They were always dealing with someone who was right there. And so that really slowed our ability to generate any, or stopped our ability to generate any pace in the game. And as it turns out, like that's, I guess, the fundamental theory of what's called tagging up. And in tagging up, the theory behind it, and I don't pretend to be an expert in this, like I say, I tried it for 2 years and then threw it away because I didn't like it, but was when we shoot it, so we're the offensive team here, that when we shoot it, rather than anybody running back, so these are the defenders on the floor, we all now start to guard the player that is guarding us, and we indeed start to move towards them. The theory being now that we are already matched up for those guys, and if they get the rebound, that we've got somebody on the ball and everybody else is being defended, which will prevent them from running out, and also put us, because we're heading towards the rim, if we get any of those long bounces or stuff in 50-50 areas, we're there and able to contest. That's like the theory behind that sits behind it. And in theory, I think it's, for me, I really liked it and I wanted to go down the path. Again, my experience with it, playing against it, was that it's been disruptive for us, for sure. What I found when trying to actually do it, and I wasn't a smart enough coach to find answers for these things, was that there were too many exceptions to the rule that allowed it for me to be something that you could continually coach. Now, it's interesting. When we're going down this path and I start the, lose faith in it, started to chart it. If we had all 5 guys tag up, in my 2 years running at the Bullets, we never got scored on once. Amazing stat. Amazing stat. However, the number of times we were able to have all 5 guys tied up, tag up, was something ridiculously low. It was something, I don't know, it was like, you know, maybe 10 possessions in my whole time we were running. It was nuts how low you could actually sit there and go, yep, all 5 guys are tagged up. Some of it is because it's been so inherently ingrained in players over the years that when we shoot, we get back, that to have players move forward is actually, that's a big habit to break. And it's one of the reasons I didn't do it with the national team, because you're with them for such a short amount of time to try to, you know, get them to do that just wasn't going to happen. So just decided to go with natural habits with the national team and stay with the 3-and-2 scenario that I now use with the Bullets. The other thing about tagging up is it's physically very demanding, because now you're asking players on every shot to move forwards, and when we don't get it, now to move back and to sprint back with their guy, who sometimes is at an advantage, because now, you know, I've moved forward, I've tagged up with my guy, they get it, he takes off, and now I've got to sprint with him. But it's just the whole forward movement, and it becomes everything, right? After a while, it just becomes easier not to move forward, particularly if you think they're going to get it. So that's, for me, something that's really, it's physically very demanding. You've got to be really fit to be a tag-up team. And then, as I said before, the exceptions to it always is there were some parts that just felt weird to me in terms of, so again, I was trying to learn about this, and the people who had experienced it before gave me some rules that were, if you're out of the corner, ball is shot, that you must rebound over the top, because you need to stay between the basket that you're defending and your guy. So you can never go this way. So you must rebound over the top was one of the rules, which I could understand. Where I had trouble with that was, you had an amazing rebounder like Mika Bakona here, and he wanted to go underneath and wedge this guy out and come up with the offensive board. And you're telling him, no, Mika, I need you to come over the top. And that seemed for me to take away one of the things that he did really well. And so I had trouble reconciling that in my mind. But then the other one that really messed with it is when players are driving and they fall out of bounds, or they take themselves out of play. I mean, we call that a spill, right? When there's any sort of spill, the guy with the ball, someone's been cutting and is behind their man, and now they're behind their play. That's just the way that it is. You run a back cut, your guy's on the high side of you. So the rule around that, and this is the bit where I started to find it really difficult to coach, was that if that happens, if you're the highest guy, now suddenly, instead of running in, you needed to somehow recognize that we'd had a spill situation, and now you needed to come this way and protect the basket, because otherwise, if you're in a spill situation, all right, now I'll put those guys as defenders. So he's fallen over, offense is here, he's tagged up, he's tagged up, he's tagged up, and he's tagged up. If he's got the ball and this guy, like, who's got that? And so to prevent that was the highest guy had to see a spill and go ahead and get back, and then we'd end up in similar situation to what I've described before. Now everybody's got to sprint back, anyone guards anybody type stuff, and somehow like you had to change between the two concepts, and at the end of the day, I didn't like it. So I didn't find success with it. Let's put it that way. And so I moved away from it. But again, you need to find what works for you and what you're happy with. Yeah, go from there.
Dre, we might pause it there, because I think we're going to lose the Zoom pretty shortly. Thanks for your time and going through so much today. We'll look to do more of these through the season as well, where we can, I guess, specialize a bit more and dive into specific areas in a bit more depth. Today's a nice broad brush. A lot of first up coaches joining today as well. So we'll have different offerings through the season where we'll pick the brains of Andrej CJ and Sam, and also some of the players to join us through the season as we do a few more of these sort of things as well. The recording of today's session will be available online later. So if there is any bits you want to share with others that couldn't make it through the day today, the link will go out later, and I'll flick that around to everyone on email as well. It's worth mentioning that Steve Catlin, who Dre mentioned before, his email's I have put it in the chat box. So if you do want to get in touch with Steve, his email is in there. So just scroll through the chat and you'll find Steve's email. In regards to, Dre, a couple of questions around exact training times for people that are keen to come along and watch and join in. I think, and feel free to jump in on this, but I think at the moment it's probably a bit restrictive, obviously due to COVID restrictions. But once we get back to some sort of normality as season starts, you'll be going back to what, morning sessions once things are back to some sort of normality?
Yeah, so during COVID restrictions at the moment, we're only allowed by the protocol essential personnel, and we've had to list that on the to Nissan Arena. So I think maybe once we get to July, whatever the next stage is, hopefully that will open up. And if that opens up, perhaps Scotty, you can send a little thing out that says, yep, people are welcome to come in, and put out when those practice sessions are. At the moment, the workouts are Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. They're likely to move as we sort of establish our rhythm with this now to 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Will be the two workout groups on those days. But I think the best thing to do at the moment is sort of sit on it, Scotty, then you can send out a thing when we're ready to have people in. But during the season, when we have team practices, they are at 10 a.m. always at Nissan Arena. Is when they're on. And again, I think it's one of those things where if you want to come along, just perhaps send a quick email and make sure that we're practicing. And I think probably once we're in season, Steve Catlin's probably your guy for that at this stage, if you want to come along to a practice session.
Yep, we'll let you know once those restrictions have changed and we can get back to normal. In that sense, worth mentioning as well that just on the restrictions that our Big Shots school holiday mega camps are back for the June-July period. So if you are a junior coach or you've got kids and you're interested in the school holiday programs, there'll be more details on our website around that as well, where you can register. But thanks to Hostplus for sponsoring today's Coach's Corner. Thanks to you, Andre, and thank you to all for joining in. We'll do it again very soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for listening. Enjoy your coaching journey. I think, Scotty, we need one on culture. I didn't get to that today, and that's probably a whole session in itself.
Yep, might do that next.
Go ahead. Thanks, guys.